Good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm out here in the Australian bush, joining you all today. This is Pro Power Hour. This is something we do every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. We really started Pro Power Hour last year just to bring you all more training sessions, talk a little bit more about Housecall Pro, and just really give you demos of various features and products within Housecall. We've covered a lot of ground. Last year, we really talked a lot about everything. Marketing Center. We talked about service plans, which we're going to repeat today, which is very topical for this time of year. Um, we talked about estimates. We've talked about invoices. We've talked about all kinds of different things. I'll drop the link in both our Facebook chat and in the Zoom chat. So you can go and find all the past recordings, review anything that we did in the past. Shane has been here the last couple of weeks. We've been doing a couple of office hours style sessions where you've been able to just come in and ask questions. And Shane has did a great job while I've been out doing that. But we're back today. We're going to talk about service plans today. And Zach Proctor is here in place of Phil. Phil's off on vacation, well deserved for him. But Zach, want to turn it over to you, let you introduce yourself, and we can get started.
Excellent. Thank you. So yeah, I am filling in for Phil. However, him and I both have the exact same role. We are both onboarding specialists here at Housecall Pro. So I always like to tell pros my goal and my job within the system is to not only help build confidence, but to be kind of your resource as the product expert of being able to train and teach on pretty much all of the tools in the system. Some of you, depending on if you've gone through support, things like that, I also assist with those too. So you might have gotten a support call with me. Like Chris said, today we are covering service plans. So there's a couple of items that we're going to run through real quick within the just the slides. We've got, I think, 7 slides on here just to point out a couple of features. And then I'm going to actually jump over into the system and give you guys a live demo, not only for how you can expect the dashboard to look, but also when it comes to kind of creating customized plans, creating plans that are maybe unique for every single one of your customer needs too as well. At any point, feel free, throw your questions into the chat too as well. I will certainly be checking those out too. So if there's anything specific, let me know. So the first thing is just kind of taking a look at the agenda. So like I said, we're going to be doing an overview of service plans, kind of what you can expect to accomplish with these plans, how the tools can be used. We'll then jump into one of our newer tools. It's been out for a couple months now, which is our smart scheduling. It might be even longer than a couple months, actually. And what that one does, think of it as route optimization for your service plans. I always tell pros that service plan visits generally are not an immediate source of revenue when you're doing the visit. So being able to kind of piggyback and have that optimization when going from, let's say, a standard job directly into a service plan visit is exactly what smart scheduling is. We will also take a look at the mobile side of things, what it's going to look like for technicians, adding this into maybe an existing job, selling it out in the field, and being able to incorporate that reoccurring revenue, which throughout the year is kind of one of those tools that really kind of helps sustain, busy and slow seasons, and just make sure that throughout that entire time, you've got some money coming in with those plans. And then lastly, add-ons. So like I mentioned, being able to customize service plans is one of the huge features of being able to ensure that rather than having customers fit just an individual bucket, you're able to really kind of customize and utilize those as upsell opportunities, as potential to kind of really highlight your different plans and your different options that you have for them. I always tell pros, think of these add-ons as kind of the bridge between those different plans that you have. If you're like tiered, like a good, better, best, these can be those upsell opportunities. So we'll take a look at all of these things and make sure that we get a nice demo in there too as well. So first and foremost, I do want to go ahead and kind of jump into the smart scheduling. I'm going to pull this page up, but as I mentioned, kind of the first thing was the overview. So service plans offer a lot of customization and a lot of availability for you to ensure that throughout the year, like I mentioned, you've got those plans and those visits still coming up for customers. And more importantly, the reminders that get sent out to them too as well to kind of help kind of put some of the, not all of it, but put some of the kind of importance back onto the customer to reach out for certain things should they need them. Now, the smart scheduling is one of our newer tools within the service plans. And what this one allows you to do is actually optimize where you're scheduling. Now, nothing is going to stop you from going into your schedule and creating these visits anywhere that you need them to occur. However, this option kind of allows you to filter down to a couple of different things. And I know it's small for the little pop up. I will be sure to show you guys when we actually jump into the demo, but you have everything from setting your expected time length for how long those services will take, the employee that's going to be assigned to it, the number of days that you're actually searching and kind of utilizing your tools to be able to see when the best time for it is. So you'll have a lot of different ways of being able to coordinate that. But the big thing is, in this third bullet point, is it's actually going to give you a distance between that job and the calculated best route for it. Now, this is not specifically the drive time. Obviously, there's going to be outside factors that kind of pull outside of just scheduling the quickest route. So we'll take a look at kind of some of those different tools too as well. Now, you can see you'll be able to pick, obviously, from your own dates and time too as well. This preferred or the suggested times can actually be minimized. So if you're not having or not wanting to utilize kind of how the tool coordinates those appropriate visits, nothing is stopping you from being able to still schedule those as any other job or estimate that you're putting in the system. Next up, we have just want to jump into, like I said, this is just a quick overview of the items that you guys can expect to see. And I will be doing a demo for both mobile and for the web portal, depending on time too as well. But within the mobile app, this is one of the big tools for technicians out in the field for being able to not only sell service plans, but also incorporate visit plans to maybe an existing job. So you can see some of the examples here where we have the ability of not only adding a service plan visit and selecting the actual window, or not window, but the exact visit within their plan. But we can also sell new plans to the customers too as well. So it makes it very easy for technicians to be able to present out in the field and potentially get that upsell value, but also the reoccurring value for the customer standpoint of having that kind of set interval of when they can expect their next service visit to be. Now, within here, and you can see on this final little image on the mobile side of things, we do have kind of how items will get listed when you create service plans. So think of it as just simply creating the service item or your description for your normal services as a visit. Now, one of the things that I do like to point out, and one thing that I'll show within the add-ons within these plans too, is or not just within the add-ons, but there's a lot of variation that you can get from one plan to the next. So you're not set in stone just based on the plans that you build, but rather kind of the options that you're providing to your customers too as well. Within the mobile, your scheduling process is going to look a little bit different. Now, you're still going to be able to go in there, select the start time for the service plan when you're actually having it run. Now, this one you can see we have it running for a 1 year duration. That's not the only route that you can go with service plans, though. You can actually do a plan that is indefinite. And I always tell pros with these two kind of foods or two different routes, I was going to say food for thought, but with these two different routes, is you're kind of looking at it from the standpoint of if it is an indefinite plan, you are kind of seeking out that customer retention, getting those customers into a plan that is going to maintain their connection to you, but also the potential identification of any future, maybe problems, repairs, anything like that. The other route, which is having it be set for a specific duration, really allows you to accommodate and account for your ever changing cost of doing business. The cost of doing business fluctuates throughout the year and even from year to year. So, being able to go in and ensure that on any plan that you're selling to customers, you're not losing any money based on changing costs. Again, costs are going to change for you. So, being able to accurately kind of update those items is something that's very important too, as well. Now within here, and like I said, we're going to do a full demo. So these are just giving you that kind of first initial view of kind of how it will look on the mobile side of things. And the big thing for these two as well is obviously incorporating them into an existing visit. So it's not a case where you're having to have multiple invoices or anything like that, but rather one unified payment for that customer at time of sign up. Now the add-ons. This is where you really get into kind of the meat and potatoes, if you will, of these service plans, where you are really able to start customizing and creating plans for any need that the customer might have. Now, obviously, these are going to be add-ons and services that you guys provide to customers, but it's that customization. One of the examples I always tell pros is I have a lot of HVAC pros who they might have a select number of units. Maybe they have more than one unit. Maybe they're a commercial location and they have 15 different units. You're going to have a lot of control for individual pricing if there is variation between those, but it just gives you that opportunity of really customizing and creating a plan specifically for them. Now, within here, you can see that we also do have a case where with add-ons, they are automatically split by 12 months. And the reason behind this is it's actually built into the fundamentals of how service plans were created to where no matter what payment cycle these pros are on, or excuse me, your customers are on, they will always be perfectly divisible by 12 for the add-ons. It actually used to be a little bit of a kind of a little funky thing that you would put in there and you would see the prices suddenly get rounded down or rounded up to make sure that it was perfectly divisible for 12 months. I always tell pros the reason why that is just because you've got a lot of different options for your customers and you just need to make sure that it's breaking out evenly regardless of the option that they actually choose. Now, I also do have a lot of pros that will create $0 service plans for the plan itself, but then will build their pricing specifically within the add-ons. This one's a little bit more customizable in terms of having not just a flat rate price for the package itself, but you are just building out each individual unit exactly how they need it. So you can add certain items like this to the price book, and I'll explain why in a moment too as well. Slight variation from how we used to be able to present the sales proposal tool to utilize the different options that you have. We can still do that. It's just in a little bit different way using estimate templates now. So kind of gives you some options for how you're presenting it to the customer, but most importantly, how they also view it when they're seeing those differences. And you can even see too, with the add-ons, it really just gives you the ultimate flexibility for your customers to make sure that you're not pricing them for items that maybe they don't need, but again, and I've said it a bunch, but the services that they actually do. Now, within the prep for service plans themselves, a lot of times your service plans are going to be initially created by an admin or an office staff member who can go into the web portal and actually build those items. So from the technician standpoint, there's not all that much that they'll need to have set up beforehand. However, if they are presenting it as an estimate to the customer, that would be a case where they would need to have them obviously built as estimate templates just to pull in quickly. But I'll show you guys, not always required because you can actually view the service plans directly within the mobile and they could just simply alternate between the different options and show those customers all of your different package options. Now this is, like I said, kind of one of our older tools. So we would utilize our sales proposal tool to be able to build out kind of a highlight for those plans, letting the customers know, especially in this case, you can see it's kind of tailored towards a good, better, best. That's not the only or the only restrictions or anything like that, though. You don't have to do a good, better, best. I have a lot of pros who offer completely separate services that are incorporated into different service plans. Generators is one that I actually see quite often of where they're presenting kind of that option for customers should they need them. And like I said, we're going to run through absolutely everything too. I just saw Renee's question. Do you have a list of session subjects? Yeah, so actually, and for that one too, Renee, just a little sidestep within your help center. So if you're logged into your Housecall Pro account, there is a lot of resources at your disposal. One of the ones that I always like to tell pros that I feel is very underutilized is the help center. Now, when you click on your avatar image in the top right-hand corner of your profile page, when you're through the web version, you'll notice help underneath there. That is Google for Housecall Pro. There is articles in there for getting started. There's articles for all of the different tools, but most importantly, they kind of create collections. So service plans specifically have in my opinion, one of the greater collections because it's all of the ins and outs, the discounts that are involved, the customization within the add-ons, all the way down to even some templates as kind of examples for you. I've had a lot of pros that actually copy and paste from those templates to utilize as a service list for it. So there is a lot of resources, and we can make sure that we get that sent over to you after today's call too as well, just to make sure you have all of those resources. Now, the sales proposal tool, like I mentioned, is a system that has been kind of not made obsolete, but has been incorporated into our estimates now. So your presenting option is actually directly within the estimates. So the way that you're seeing these is exactly how we would still build our templates. It just simply wouldn't be from within the proposal tool. So no change in terms of how you're building the templates, just different location. And we'll touch on that pretty briefly too as well. Now, when it comes to actually selling your plans, there is a couple of different ways. One, as an office or admin staff, you'll actually be able to go directly into your customer profiles and produce, whether it's a draft and you're wanting to share it for them to be able to go in and view it, kind of like what you're seeing here, but also the estimate route. Now, the one variation is on the mobile side of things, because like I said, you can actually go in and view these and present them directly to the customer, showing all of your different pricing options, the different services and details that are incorporated into it. So it gives you a lot of control within there of how you're actually selling it. Most of the time, I would say it is kind of sold as a piggyback off of a service where maybe you're offering a maintenance plan based on the service that you've completed for them. So it's just kind of not a shoe in necessarily, but just a kind of automatic like push for the customer, especially if they're finding value in it. So there's a couple of different ways. I do have pros that will actually sell them directly within the service itself rather than listing it out as a paid invoice or excuse me, a paid service plan. So using that $0 option, and then we'll initiate the actual plan for the customer. It really just kind of comes down to where in the cycle, kind of from start to finish with the customer of where you're actually pitching it to them and to sell it. Now, the good option, like I said, is well, not a good option, but one of the more visible routes is to produce those different packages as actual estimate templates so that if there's any details or any maybe special discounts that you're giving to customers, you'll be able to kind of control that on a case by case basis. And I'll point out what I mean by the discounts with that one. And we'll go through the full setup too as well. So within payments, there is kind of two routes for the payments when it comes to setting up the service plans. Now, for example, if a customer sets up a service plan with a credit card, that is actually something that not only will they receive a customer portal for the service plans, they'll be able to update their card on file. It's something that you can also update anytime that you need to. The benefit for the credit cards on file is, for one, auto payments. They can actually set those up to where you don't really have to do anything manual on the payment side of things, but just rather let those reminders go out to the customers and allow them to pay it. Or if they've saved their card on file, it will run it automatically for them. The other route is if you're capturing something, say cash or check, or maybe another credit card processing route that's not directly integrated within Housecall Pro. That's your other route. Now, the downside to cash, check, and other is the fact that you do have to go in there and manually apply the payment to the customer's service plans. Now, the benefit of that is within your actual service plans dashboard, there is a wonderful report in there that will pull up all of your customers that are either due for billing, upcoming visits to as well. But it kind of gives your team, gives you the direct kind of information that you need of saying, here's a customer with an upcoming bill. Let's give them a shout and make sure that this is, collected if they're, mailing in a check or anything like that. So you'll have a couple of different options for how you can do that. Now, customers can still save their card into their profile, which was a newer feature, and able to incorporate like auto pay, things like that. Same concept goes for the service plans. It's just simply in a different location for it. I'm not seeing any questions yet, so I'm thinking everything is still going smooth, which is fine. Kind of expected that until we got into the actual demo. So I will point out both of these two different routes. And this is one too, didn't mean to go to the next slide. This 3A is one that I really like to point out too, because you always have the ability of being able to mark a service plan as paid for a customer. And this is extremely useful when maybe you're not starting the service plan at time of visit. So maybe you sell it to them and their plan starts in 2 months and you're not wanting to charge them until that plan actually initiates. You can actually choose to defer that when you've accepted the plan for the customer. Um, Now we do have a couple of, like I said, the selling aspect for service plans has kind of changed a little bit from the standpoint of being able to utilize the sales proposal tool, but estimates are still going to give you that complete option to do that. And you can see this one, I think it's an older update actually, but you have the ability of being able to save drafts too as well. So if you're kind of in the process of starting a plan or just getting more details from the customer to kind of build a more unique plan for them, you can always save it as a draft, always come back to it. And I'll show you actually on the customer page and on the service plans page where you can easily access both of those. Um, any questions? That's pretty much it for the slides itself. So I'm going to be jumping over to the demo now, but just wanted to see if anybody had any questions so far. I guess not. So let me switch over real quick, and I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second because it won't let me exit full screen for some reason. There we go. So what I have done here is I've actually got my test account pulled up. So all of the data that you're going to be seeing on here is kind of representing not necessarily on this report, but when we jump into the actual service plans location, is going to be giving you a representation of kind of how you can expect your data to populate to as well. Now, the best thing about the service plans is they actually have kind of their own dashboard. Of course, it wants to log me out now. But they'll actually have their own dashboards specifically for service plan reporting. Now, you can go into the reporting tool, and we do have a section for service plans. But I always like to tell pros that these reports that you're seeing in here, the summary, reoccurring revenue, our due for billing, and lastly, our unscheduled service, kind of give you that direction for every single plan, where it's located at, what needs to be done, expiring soon or pending renewals are kind of those ones where I tell pros, keep an eye on them because those give you that kind of immediate call action of saying, hey, we noticed that you didn't renew your service plan. Was there a reason why? Is there more customization that we could possibly add? So it just gives you that kind of rekindling opportunity with that customer if they step away from your service plan. Now, the first plan that the first report that I'm going to show you is just your plan summary. Now, this one here just shows you the statuses for every single plan. You can see the total number of plans, my total all-time revenue too as well. But most importantly is I can go into any one of these stages and see just those items. So if it's a case where I'm having, let's say, a call flow and I'm wanting to go in for any of my customers that are upcoming, renewals, expired, anything like that that you're kind of highlighting as kind of a touch point, you'll be able to come in here and immediately see all of those customers that correspond to the status that you're looking at here. Next up, we have our reoccurring revenue. Now, this one is one that I always tell pros is more there to give you a snapshot more than being necessarily something that you're going to have to utilize on a daily or weekly basis. Because you can see that it's actually, and I've set my plans up specifically so that you can actually see my kind of the patterns that are flowing. So on these smaller ones, that's the ones that I have that they're going every single month versus quarterly versus one time. So depending on when you're selling your plans, this is not something that you can expect to see. I have just set my plans up to highlight that to let you see how each month is just broken down based on the revenue that you've actually brought in. Now next up, we have the reoccurring revenue. Excuse me, the due for billing. Gosh. Now this one here is for those cases where, like I mentioned, within your plan creation, you're charging the customer maybe cash or check or any of the other routes. Now, the best part is this little credit card icon on the far right-hand side will allow you to immediately go in there and actually process that payment for them. Since this one is a manual payment, generally you probably won't be needing to put in card information that often because they should save that on there. But if you're capturing any of those other routes, you can see how quickly you can go in and put those notes in. The big highlight for this one is if you're taking a check, I always tell pros, put in the check number into the payment notes just so that you have the visibility for the connection points. What does this invoice, or excuse me, what does this check actually pay for within the system? These are items that you'll be able to actually pull and run reports on, so you'll always be able to know exactly where it came from. Now, I do have a couple of them that are in here that are past due, and you'll notice that's all that's showing up in here. So this one is just customers that have passed that billing cycle and are showing up as past due for it. So if I jump in here, you'll notice it doesn't really expand that much. However, I do have the option of being able to go in with any of the reports in Housecall Pro and create a little bit more customized filtering. Failed billing, for example, if a customer gets a failed billing, they're actually going to receive a notification that lets them know that their processing failed, and if they need to, they can update a card on file and actually process that moving forward. So I just like to point these out. Not something that you'll have to use all that often, but it is a very useful tool should you need to jump over to that side of things. The report on this page that I do find the most important is this unscheduled visits, because the way that this report actually works, as you can see, we've got a bunch of stuff for January of 2025 in there. If I had gone in and already scheduled these, it's actually set up to automatically show when like if a service plan is within a month of its next visit, it will automatically populate into this. Now, this one, again, allows you to go straight into the scheduling, same as the payments do up top. I was going to say upstairs, but up top with your due for billing. But this also takes you directly into the scheduling for them. Now, I want to jump and do a little bit of a sidestep real quick because I do want to highlight the smart scheduling tool that I had kind of mentioned. Now, when you come in here, you can see it does default to an hour, but depending on for one, the level of services and the amount of time that you're actually needing to utilize for that visit, you could easily come in here and adjust this so that any of your different customers can actually get booked in. I mean, any of your different employees can get booked in based on a time that works best for them. Now, this is really convenient because most of my addresses are completely fake. So a lot of times it doesn't actually show me a mile distance here, but you can see how on each one of these windows that it's recommending, it's actually showing me how close it is to the next job. And that's that form of route optimization, using this as kind of a piggyback to any of the other jobs that you already have in your calendar. Ultimately allowing you to kind of make sure that your technicians are not having to do a lot of driving, maybe across town, for a visit that is technically not a charge visit. You're not going to get paid on the time of visit necessarily, so it's nice to ensure that you've got it kind of piggybacking with other ones. I do see a question. Does Housecall Pro let us know when a customer card is expiring? Chris, do you know on that one? I know it will for failed billing. I want to say it does for the card on file too as well, but I'm not 100% sure on the expiration date. That is
Yeah,
a
I can double check. I'm not sure
okay.
that expiration date is one of those factors, but
I didn't
I'll double
think
check and
so.
let you know.
Great question, Robert. We will definitely follow up with you on that one, because that is a very, very common issue that would come up, especially if you've got hundreds of customers with their cards saved on file. You want to make sure that they're properly getting the notification for when those cards need to be updated to as well. Uh, at the very least, like I mentioned, the failed billing. So if they have a single failed billing, it will send them an email, let them know that their charge was failed, and they would be able to update their card information then. Not sure about beforehand though. Now we're going to jump out of the suggested times here, and you can see from your standard schedule, all it does is actually adds this one little icon right here next to the map and calendar selections. So if you wanted to, you could easily minimize that and still go about scheduling your estimate, or excuse me, your service plan, however you need with whatever employee you're needing to actually take. Now I'll just show you this one little item right here. As you can see, when I actually schedule this, it does pull in the service plan visit number and the plan that they're on. So it gives good visibility too for the technicians, just in terms of kind of the baseline plan that they can expect to see. Now, jumping back over to the service plans dashboard, the big kind of first step, obviously, I do have a couple of plan templates over here, but the first time you come into your service plans location, you are going to have to build your plans out. Now, anytime you're going in and building a plan, you're going to have your 3 pages of creation. This first one, as you can see, is just the general details. So the name, the description. So what I'll do, let's just say that this is Power Hour Test. Now, from right here, and this is one of those reasons why I like to point out the service plan articles, is because they actually have different templates for different industries. So HVAC, plumbing, electrical, you name it, you've got some options in there for kind of how you can see these descriptions set up. So realistically, you can tailor these however you need to. I personally have had a lot of success with my pros going in there and putting in like within the description of what's the terminology? I'm drawing a blank, but just the I'll just say services included. I'm drawing a blank on what I normally tell them. And then they'll come in here and they might put in, let's say I'll do this one as though it's kind of like a plumbing one. Let's say they're flushing the water heater or any of those different options. And you can actually have them just listed out like this. You could go in there, you could categorize them based on number two as well. Ultimately, this description is how it's going to be presented to the customer. So I always tell pros, just make sure that it looks good, that it's not too brief, and that it lets them know kind of what all is included within those, especially if it's a case where maybe you're doing bronze, silver, gold, or any of those good, better, best options, because a lot of times these details are what makes the difference between the actual package that you're working on. Now, next up, we do have the discounts here. Now, what this one will do, and I tell pros, think of this as a loyalty discount. If you sell a plan to a customer, they're not only going to receive discounts on their services and materials for all future jobs, but you can kind of tailor it to them specifically. I have a lot of pros that will come in here and they will actually create one, let's say for veterans, and they'll go in there and they'll have a plan specifically for maybe an offset of customers rather than just the package itself. So you've got some options in there for how you're kind of tailoring these. But the big thing to keep in mind, this does not specify services versus materials. So if you're providing, let's say, a discount for materials, this would actually automatically apply it to anything that you're selling to the customer. So with that being said, if it is just, we don't discount our services, but do for materials or vice versa, I wouldn't recommend including that directly within the creation for it because this will default for everything. So just something to keep in mind for that. And then lastly, we do have business units down here. So business units, if you use QuickBooks, align with classes. So it's again, just giving you that control of being able to ensure that if your invoices for your service plans are being pushed out of the system, that you can have them correctly corresponding with classes that you might have in QuickBooks. The next page is the specifics. So this is all of the parameters of the actual plan itself. Now, the one thing I always like to show pros is, as I mentioned within the slides, add-ons are limited to being broken down by 12, and so are the number of visits that you can do within a single service plan is limited to 12. Think of it as just once a month or however often you're going. Maybe you're doing it quarterly and you need to have those 4 visits in there. There is really no right or wrong for this. It ultimately comes down to how often you're wanting to provide whatever service you are to your customer and where that value is. With these service plans, a lot of it comes down to kind of that break-even cost of what is, efficient for you when you're running these plans in terms of when you're needing to see them. Now, the next one that we have here is duration. Now, as I mentioned, we have the indefinite option or customer continues until they cancel. And you can see that we actually have 4 payment routes down here. Now, I could have every single one of these payment options turned on, and I could provide a different price for every single one of them. Now, I'm just going to make up numbers, so please don't go in there and check my math to make sure that I'm doing the exact same amount. Let's just say something like that, and I'll just make something extreme for the yearly. Obviously, those two don't line up. So you've got some options. I actually have a lot of pros that will go in there, and depending on the payment cycle that they're wanting their customers to utilize, they might incentivize the every year so that they're getting that entire payment up front or maybe it's they want that monthly reoccurring revenue. So you've got some options for kind of how you're tailoring that based on the needs of your customer. The only change that you'll actually see down here is when you actually switch the duration. And it actually opens up one of our fifth and final options for the service plans, which is one time upfront. Now, the reason why this one is obviously not displayed there is because there is no end date. So they couldn't potentially pay for the entire plan up front. However, with actual set durations, you have that control within there. Now, down at the very bottom, this is an important toggle that I like to point out because, as I mentioned, you kind of have two different routes for payments. You have your credit card route, or you have your other routes, which is cash check or other. I actually have a lot of pros too that will go in here and they'll create two different plans based on credit cards versus cash. Now, is that required? Absolutely not. But what it does allow you to do is if, let's say, you're incentivizing credit card payments for the ease, you can actually incentivize the price of the plan too as well. So it kind of gives you that control of being, again, just being able to tailor these towards what your needs are, both on the customer side, but also on the financial side for your company. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this one on just because I don't have my bank account connected, so I won't be able to actually run any credit cards in here. And then I'll go to the last page. And this is the add-ons. So this is where you could go in there and you could add absolutely anything. I know I did like plumbing stuff on the first one and now I'm doing filters, but again, the upsell opportunity there is just based on whatever you're trying to actually incorporate. The other option that I have a lot of pros utilizing is this might be based on the number of units. So if you're an HVAC pro, or even for a lot of our other industries too as well, when there's multiple units that you might be kind of incorporating into the service plan, the benefit for add-ons is it's quantity based. So if it's going in and saying, hey, based on the number of filters, here's your price for it, if we've got $150 for each unit, obviously it's going to accommodate for multiple units. The one downside, and this is one that I actually identified with one of my pros earlier, is different pricing. If you're providing like bulk pricing or anything like that for, let's say, 5+ units, 4+ units, anything like that, it would need to be incorporated as its own line item or add-on within the service plan setup just to be able to facilitate that different pricing. Any questions on the setup? Doesn't look like it. Everyone's quiet today. So what I'll do now is I do want to jump into actually how you're incorporating this plan. Now, anytime you build a plan, and you can see I've got quite a few of them over here. Anytime you create a plan, you will always be able to go back in and edit it. But one of the items that I like to point out, that one's not a good example because that one runs indefinitely. Let's say we're changing this platinum plan here. When you go in to edit these, you'll actually get this little banner running right across the top, letting you know that this is for all new agreements or when the customer renews too as well. So with that being said, it's not going to have any impact on any of your customers that are currently in that package, either until they get a new plan or once they renew if it's set for a specific duration. So I just like to point that one out, not one that you'll see all that often unless you come in to actually edit one of the plans that you've already got in there. Now, for adding them within the web portal, the location that you're actually going to go to is directly within the customer's profile page. Now, on these, and I want to show you a couple of different customers that I have because also within here, you're going to be able to see all of the plans that they've had. Now, the reason why I like to highlight this is because if you have, let's say, a set duration for your plans, when customers renew, it will actually pop up as a new active plan, whereas their old one will be expired now. So you will kind of have a running list of plans for the customers if they have a set duration. If it's a case where it runs indefinitely, it will just stay in here as active for as long as the customer keeps the actual plan itself. Now, to add a plan onto a customer's profile, you can see right up here in the top left. And of course, I picked a bad customer because I turned on do not service for this one specifically. So let's switch over to Don here. But in the top right-hand corner, you have your creation options for all of the customers within here, or all specifically within this customer profile. Now you'll notice, and this is a good example because I do have a couple of different addresses in here. The same as with creating new jobs and estimates, service plans will also let you associate it with a specific address in a customer's profile. So maybe we have a billing address versus a service location. You'll be able to easily differentiate where that plan is actually taking place at. So I will go ahead and just select this one here. Now, from this page, all you're doing is just choosing the plan that you're wanting to do. Now, you can see gold and platinum pop, or excuse me, gold and AC pop up, but I do have other plans. This is just based off of ones that I've used frequently. So that's why they are popping up from this list, but you can easily search for it and it will pull up anything that you've created. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one. I named it veterans, even though I didn't add the discount for it. But again, you can kind of see how easy it would be to identify the difference between any of those options that you've got there. Now, on the next page, we've got the actual details. So the setup items, the kind of creation flow that you'll see is, again, very structured, similarly to actually building the package itself. We're going to choose the start date. You do actually have the ability of being able to give credit. So if a specific salesperson or technician or anything like that sells the plan, this would just be for reporting side of things so that you could see service plans sold by employees, so on and so forth. Now, the start date is important because this one actually just shows you when the plan starts. But if we were to push that start date out, that's where you have the option of actually being able to defer the plan to as well. So you've got all of those options directly within here too. Next up, we have our add-ons, and you can see that this one is one of those ones that is being impacted by, like I mentioned, that rounding that takes place. Whenever you have an add-on, and I say that, I think it might have been updated, so this might just be because I'm on an old service plan, but it will actually make it perfectly divisible by 12, just so that if you're charging a customer monthly versus 6 months, they're still paying the exact same price for that add-on itself. Now, if I wanted to, as I mentioned, I could go in here and easily add different units, different quantity amounts. You can't customize the plans from the creation page, but obviously you can customize what that customer is signing up for. Now, one little item that I do like to point out for these two is by default, you can see that these items are turned off for taxable. That would be a case where if I wanted to, I could easily go in there, choose the actual processing, or excuse me, tax rate that applies for whatever you're selling to the customer based on different counties, anything like that, and can go ahead and choose that. So if you are charging taxes for your service plans, very easy to incorporate it. And the last little portion that we have down here. Now, this one might make you think that you are scheduling and going ahead and creating this outline of when these service plan visits are to take place. However, this is actually a reminder cadence that is being set up for the customers. So, April, a month before, or whatever time frame I set, they'll receive that notification based on where I'm setting this. I can always come in here and adjust these accordingly. So if you've got a certain cadence, obviously I probably wouldn't push it to the next year, but if you have a specific cadence that you're wanting to schedule, even if you're starting the plan at different times throughout the years, you can always accommodate that too. Now you can see that little option right up here for the actual plan of being able to save a draft. So on that first customer that I showed you, you could see that I had, I think, 3 drafts in there. So you can build as many drafts as you need to. It really just kind of comes down to how, I would say, how cluttered you want it to be. I would say if a plan is not moving forward, get it out of the customer profile, because even as a draft, it's still going to populate there. So you're still going to see the data on their profile pages. Now, the last page here is allowing me to kind of see the overview. So along with those 4 visits that I was showing on the first page, it does actually print out the next 4 for it. I just didn't view all of those, and that is just due to the fact that I have it set for a 2-year duration. If you have this running indefinitely, it will actually create, if I'm not mistaken, I think it will actually create 60 visits. And if I'm not mistaken, depending on how often, it will go all the way out to the end of 2029. So you can kind of see how quickly you would be able to just coordinate that, all of your future visits for that customer too as well. Oh, and I saw Renee can't stay. So have a good one, Renee. Now, the last two options kind of come in when you're actually sending the plan to the customer. Now, you can see for this one specifically, it's just got my email template here that I could go in if I needed to. I could add any details into this and really start typing out customized messages to them should I need to. Along with the acceptance, they'll actually receive an invite to the service plan portal too as well, which is their kind of location of being able to go in. They can see their visits, they can make any changes to their card on file, but most importantly, they can also make payments too as well. So I will go ahead and send this one, and you'll see what will happen is it will just take me into the actual setup page itself. Every customer that you actually build a service plan for will always populate a page just like what you're seeing here. This can be accessed directly from their profile page, or if we go back into the service plans location itself, if I go in, let's say I click on constants here, you can see how it also brings me into that exact same page. This is, again, just a extension of the dashboard page where you're able to go in and see all the specifics for one specific customer rather than all of them kind of grouped together. Now, one thing I do want to do real quick, I know we're getting closer to the end of time, but I want to switch over temporarily to my mobile app because when it comes to actually adding them into an existing invoice, it's even easier for the technicians. Less steps, I will say, not necessarily easier. So let's just say I'm using this toilet repair. Actually, let's do one of my upcoming ones since that's back in June of last year. So we'll use this one coming up here. Now, within the job pages, if you scroll down right below the customer, you'll actually be able to see their service plans. If they have any active ones, you'll be able to add service plan visits. In fact, let me jump back and go into a customer that I know has an active one. I don't know if I have a job for this customer, so let me just create one real quick. And let's see. Yep, perfect. So you can see this customer already has my gold plan. So maybe they called me out for a service outside of the actual service plan, but since I'm there, I want to go ahead and knock that one off. Now you can see I have a lot of old visits for this pro that I haven't done anything with. That's why I have so many of them that are from last year and the year before. So this one isn't the greatest example for current dates, but I could easily say, here's the visit for that actual plan. Or if I wanted to sell them an entirely new plan, all I would have to do is click on Add Service Plan. And this is what I mentioned by the technicians kind of have that opportunity to really be able to kind of preview the individual plans. Now, this one, let's click into my Power one. Power Hour, and you can kind of see how it breaks down all of your information, gives you kind of the time frame for it. This one specifically, it jumps in there, and for some reason, I might not have activated the other prices actually, because I'm curious why it's only showing me my monthly rate. But you could see how easily they could go in, preview these plans, and if the customer liked it, add that plan immediately onto the invoice. The items that they will be responsible for when actually selling it out in the field are just simply going to be the start and end date. And then once we add it, you can see the add-ons too as well. So if they're incorporating any of those tools in there, it is as simple as adding it into the pricing, choosing whichever route. So you can see for this one, I do have all of my payment options set up. So monthly, every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, or one time up front, just based on what the customer needs or what they prefer, not necessarily needs. And then you can see once I click done, it will still give me the option of if I want to, I could send it to the customer, I could save it as a draft, or I could choose that last option, which is go ahead and pay for the plan, which you'll see here incorporates it directly into the price that the customer will see on their invoice. So for this one, I don't have any actual pricing for the job itself. So it's just that one-time upfront service plan payment. This will immediately sync into that same dashboard that we were looking at a second ago. So you'll have a new active plan and you'll actually have your dates set up for it. If you need to adjust any of the notifications, anything like that, you'll always have that control too as well. So, and that is pretty much pretty much it on the demo side of things. So from the mobile app, like I mentioned, very easy for the guys to add in there. The one area that you'll notice a slight bit of limitations on the mobile side of things is you can't access the dashboard directly from within here. So you wouldn't be able to see kind of your statuses and due for billing and type items. Those are strictly on the web portal, just to give you a little bit more administrative control. And that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Zach. Y'all, before we go, any final questions? Throw them in the chat. I'm looking at Facebook and at Zoom here. Give y'all all a minute. I did drop the link to all of our past recordings as well in both chats. So if you're interested in going back and surfing through all the different topics we've covered, you can go into that help article. And actually within that help article too, you can go and get additional resources for each feature that we've covered in Pro Power Hour. And then, like I said, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking about Marketing Center. We'll be covering QuickBooks. I'll kind of do a part 2 to that. We kind of did a Q&A in December, so we'll do a part 2 Q&A in January. And then, open to your suggestions as well. If there's anything you guys want us to cover on Pro Power Hour, if there's any product help that we can provide, let us know. We're open to your thoughts and suggestions. And if you're on Zoom and you're not a part of our Facebook group, I definitely encourage you to join. I can drop the link to that. It's a great place to ask product questions, network with other pros. You get to connect with me on a daily basis if you need any kind of help with anything. Lauren Jean is also in there. She's awesome. She's one of our tech support representatives. So encourage you to join the Facebook group. And I'm checking. I don't see any questions on the Facebook side. That's all right. Zach, really grateful for you being here today, filling in. That was a
Of
great
course.
demo. Thank you.
Happy to help.
Dropping that link right now. If you're interested in joining the Facebook group, just you can join. You can add your information. We'll be able to accept you into the group. And if you're not a super pro yet, I encourage you to become a super pro as well. If anybody has any questions on how to do that, happy to help out. I don't see any other questions, so I think we are gonna wrap up. Zach, like I said, really grateful for you being here today. Thank you.
Thanks for
We'll catch
having me.
everyone next week. Shayna's gonna be here next week, in place of me. But I'll be back next week on the Facebook group, and I'll be in there today and tomorrow. So, hope to see you guys around. Hope everyone's having a great start to your year. And we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks, Zach.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.